Let's go to Boston, Massachusetts, and speak to Glenn Carl, who's an author and a former officer in the CIA. Glenn, it's always a pleasure to have you on the program. Do you see, just in this one particular story about misinformation about the Pfizer vaccine, do you see the Kremlin's hand behind it?
Oh, I very clearly do. Now, I don't know firsthand the facts of this particular site and account that was then shut down that the European Union and France and Germany have detected, but I have no doubt whatsoever about the accuracy of their characterizations. The Russians are past masters at this, and there's really nothing new under the sun in this regard. Their objective is, as a strategic objective for the nation, is to sow a discord in Western democracies, in particular the United States, but in the European Union members also, to convince the populations to have doubts about the legitimacy of the system, the medical system, the political system, the defense establishment, the press, and truth itself, all so as to make these societies, the United States and the West, less coherent and able to carry out policies that the Russians don't want. It's a way to leverage a weak position into one of strength. And the Russians have done this since before the Russian Revolution 100 years ago. It's a standard procedure, yes.
Yeah, I mean, but this phrase fake news, some people say that Vladimir Putin practically invented it. I mean, you're talking further back in history since the Russian Revolution. But people have said that since Vladimir Putin became president of Russia, he's pushed this idea that if he can just put so much fake news out into the world, people will be so confused they won't know what's real and what isn't anymore. How have you seen that play out, for example, over the 4 years of the Trump administration? Because there was all that talk about the Russians trying to influence that election, which Trump beat Hillary Clinton in.
Well, that's exactly right. And one of the key figures in the 21st century is someone who's actually relatively unknown in the larger scheme of world attention. His name is Vladislav Surkov. He was a close advisor to Vladimir Putin going back 20 years. He's held various positions. And he was a man in the publicity profession. He was a public relations guy and an advertising person, as well as an author. And he developed this explicit strategy of creating a doubt about verifiable facts, about objective truth. Now, that sounds crazy, but it is the explicit policy of the Russian government. First, starting in the beginning years of the 21st century, Putin turned this approach towards the Russian population itself. And if you make truth hard to discern, then anything can be true. And facts don't matter, and you can just lie with impunity. The term fake news comes from Russia, comes, frankly, from the Russian intelligence services. It's not a coincidence that this is what's happened in the United States. The Russians have targeted their strategic enemy, the United States, with tremendous success. And one can debate, for me, there is no debate, that Donald Trump was actually in control of and beholden to the Russians. But whether that is true or not is actually even secondary, because the Russians have explicitly had the strategic campaign to undermine objective reality and truth so as to destroy democracy and Russian opponents. Absolutely true. And it's directly tieable to Vladimir Putin's Russia.
And possibly even more insidious, of course, are the cyber attacks, many of which are believed to emanate from China or North Korea or indeed Russia. Reuters has just broken some news about that JBS, the world's biggest meat packer, and the cyber attack conducted against it, saying that someone with direct knowledge of the matter, it says that it's a Russian group called Revel behind this hack. So there are different ways of using technology, clearly, Carl, to exert influence over other countries. The thing is, how do individuals combat that? Because we as citizens will find it quite difficult to verify a source. So it's down to governments, surely. There was a case a few years ago of the government in the Netherlands during a general election being so worried about Russian interference, they decided they would count every single ballot paper by hand to make sure that the Russians didn't influence the campaign.
Well, you've fingered one of the critical challenges and problems for Western states, for democracies, for any state. is how does one counter this? The problem is frequently I will do interviews and I'll be on the air and then there will be someone with an opposing view, a different view from Russia. And that seems to be a fair, objective way to approach things. But that sets up immediately a he said, she said dynamic. People who don't know anything about me or the facts or this other fellow will be inclined to lend to give an ear to both sides. And already, therefore, they have partially succeeded by being on the same stage and having a voice. Even though the lie is blatant and then detected, it changes the reality that the listener has. How do we combat this? It's a tremendous challenge. It's one of the great challenges, crises for the democracies, for the West in our century. And I think the only thing one can do is tell the truth. If you want to eliminate the darkness, you have to shed light upon it. And that means have verifiable facts, open sources, always demand to have the sourcing verified, and then have a free discourse. The second component, which is critical, and here's where you see the crisis in the United States, is that leaders are very important. People believe what they are told. Even if it's a lie, people will believe what they're told. And here in the United States for years now, the Republican Party in general and Donald Trump in particular have bought into a lot of this disinformation and these lies. And so what is the public to do? With leaders spreading this, there will be a terrible effect. So you need honest leaders who will tell the truth. Joe Biden just acknowledged that terrible thing occurred in Tulsa, Oklahoma 100 years ago. That helps defend objective reality. And then you have to have media sources with open sourcing verifiable. I think that's all one can do.
Glenn, you mentioned democracies. In terms of international relations, surely, I mean, most people must surely think that even in Western democracies, that their intelligence agencies, whatever they may be in the US, the CIA or NSA in the UK, MI5, MI6, that they must be conducting similar misinformation campaigns that target their enemies, surely.
Well, it is true that most intelligence services have done or do this kind of operation at different times. The United States laws have made it illegal for the U.S. intelligence communities to do any sort of disinformation operation that can return to the U.S. public. Now, that's an almost impossible standard in today's world because a report given in Istanbul will immediately appear in Washington. And so theoretically, that would make it impossible for the U.S. to do this. And in fact, nations do these things. The challenge is not to be a complete cynic, and it's a very hard thing, and to look at what the objectives are in the various operations that are conducted. Is one seeking to advance a national interest, or is one also seeking to destroy foreign societies, countries' system and society? I think that's a dividing line that can be fuzzy, but that is real.
Glenn, really interesting to talk with you, as always. Really appreciate it. Glenn Carl in Boston, Massachusetts.